Hey guys, tonight we begin with the grim, dangerous, and not so glamorous world of medieval assassins, those shadowy figures who crept through castle halls and darkened alleys to change history with a blade and a whisper. While Hollywood makes them look cool, the truth is being a medieval assassin seriously sucked. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim, the lights maybe turn on a fan for that soft background. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's be clear, no one in medieval times woke up and said, "You know what, I'd like to stab a nobleman in the throat for silver coins," and the honor of hiding in a barrel for days becoming an assassin wasn't a career path. It was more like a last stop on the life went horribly wrong. Most medieval assassins weren't mysterious loners, trained in mountaintop temples. They were desperate peasants, disgraced soldiers, ex-thieves with decent aim, or people so far off society's radar they could kill a man and still not be noticed in the census. If you were well off, you didn't become an assassin. You hired one if you had a title land or even a goat to your name. You were in management, but if you just escaped Data's prison, had a reputation for solving problems, and could sneak into a tavern without being seen, congratulations, someone somewhere was about to slide a coin purse across the table and whisper a name. And that name wasn't a fun one. You weren't asked to take out Bob the quiet turnip farmer. It was usually a corrupt baron, a bishop with too much gold, or someone with bodyguards and a moat. The pay tempting, the job horrifying, but by the time someone considered it, they had nothing left to lose: no family, no future, and definitely no dental plan. Plus, let's not forget the absolute lack of job perks. No pension, no glory, no evenings off. You couldn't exactly hang up a shingle that said quiet eliminations by appointment. You just had to stay quiet, move fast, and never ever tell anyone what you did for a living. Especially not loudly over ale at the inn. "Oh yeah, I'm a traveling carpet seller. The stains, dye, so yes." Nobody dreamed of being a medieval assassin. They landed there because the world chewed them up and spat them out. Wearing a hood and holding a rusty dagger, you weren't the hero, you weren't even the villain. You were the footnote that made everyone nervous, and probably didn't live to enjoy the coin. Let's burst the first myth wide open. Medieval assassins didn't train under candlelight in some hidden monastery with wise mentors and inspirational flute music. In the background, there was no montage, no teacher, no pep talk. If you learned anything, it was by not dying the first few times you tried. Most assassins weren't trained professionals. They were desperate amateurs with a decent sense of direction and the ability to climb quietly without sneezing. If you had military experience, great. That meant you knew how to hold a knife properly. If not, well, stabbing someone is fairly intuitive. But escaping afterward with both kidneys still intact, that takes skill or luck. Usually just luck. There were no manuals, no guild orientation meetings, no safety briefings. You didn't get taught how to spot a body double, or where nobles keep their bedroom exits. You figured it out while hanging from a windowsill, wondering if you just crept into the servants' quarters again. Poison that was trial and error, with heavy emphasis on error. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes your target just got mildly dizzy and more suspicious of his soup. Sometimes you drank the wrong cup. There was no medieval poison control hotline. Just hope, herbal guesswork, and a strong stomach. Sure, if you were lucky, and I mean lottery lucky, you might have picked up some skills from thieves or mercenaries. Maybe an older assassin showed you how to walk without squeaking on cobblestones, but mentoring wasn't standard. It was rare and short-lived, because assassins don't retire. They disappear weapons. Training, forget it. You weren't carrying a broadsword. You had a dagger you stole off a guard, maybe a garrote if you were feeling fancy, and whatever else fit under your cloak without jingling. So no, you weren't some shadowy martial arts master. You were a guy with calloused hands, quiet footsteps, and a deeply unhealthy relationship with alleyways. Success didn't come from training. It came from survival. You learned how to kill by doing it quickly, sloppily, then vanishing before anyone could sketch your face and tack it to a church door. In short, your education was brutal, practical, and offered zero graduation ceremonies, just bruises, bloodstains, and the creeping realization that you were very much on your own. Let's talk about why you became an assassin in the first place. Coin, cold, heavy, jangly, deliciously spendable coin. The promise of it is what got you into this. But the reality you got paid in lies when someone hires an assassin. They don't want a long-term relationship. They want a one-time service, no paperwork, and ideally no witnesses, including you. They offer you a pouch of silver, half now, half when the job is done. That's if they're feeling generous. But here's the thing. When the job is done is code for after we verify. You didn't mess it up or make us look bad or leave a trail that leads back to us or survive long enough to tell anyone about it. So you do the job, you sneak through. Shadows, risk your life, maybe kill a baron in his sleep. Not pretty, not poetic. And when you return, ah, yes, about that payment, the client fled, terribly sorry or worse. They try to kill you. A knife to the gut is cheaper than a bonus. And even when you do get paid, it's never quite enough. Not for the risk, not for the blood, not for the 3 days you spent hiding in a haystack with fleas and moral regret. You get a handful of coins, a curt nod, and a reminder you were never here. Also, fun fact, some contracts were fake political traps. You'd be told to assassinate someone, dangerous, only to find out it was a decoy. With guards waiting, congratulations. You just walked into a sting operation with your name already carved on the gallows. And even when the deal was real, you couldn't exactly go to court and file a complaint. Your Honor, I'd like to sue Lord Edmund for breach of assassin contract. The only court you'd see was the one where you were the exhibit, so you learned to take what you could demand payment up front and trust absolutely no one. Not even the greasy little scribe who swore this job would change your life. It did mostly by shortening it. Being an assassin meant living on broken promises and vanishing before they broke you. So you've taken the job you've been lied to about the pay. You're probably going to die now. Let's talk gear. Forget the fantasy novels and sneaky video games. There were no retractable wrist blades, smoke bombs, enchanted daggers, or crossbows that folded neatly into your boot. Your toolkit consisted of whatever you could steal, sharpen, or hide beneath a tattered cloak without clanking if you were lucky. And I mean, found a gold coin in a dead man's shoe. Lucky you had a good dagger, not ornate, not curved like a dragon's tooth, just sharp, hopefully rust-free, and ideally, one that didn't smell like the last guy you stabbed with it. Poison, it existed, sure, but it wasn't as glamorous as a slow drip into a wine goblet. Most medieval poisons were unpredictable, made from plants, minerals, or toad guts. Some worked instantly, some took hours, some made your victim vomit for days, and then recover angrier and now very suspicious of stew ropes. Occasionally useful, you could strangle, climb, or tie something up with one, but you'd better know how to use it fast, because nothing kills the mood like trying to wrestle someone while muttering, "Wait, which knot goes under again." Bows effective, yes, if you had one knew how to shoot it and weren't trying to smuggle it through a palace disguised as a flower arranger. Most assassinations were up close and personal. No time for elegant marksmanship, just quick, quiet, and hopefully not messy enough to slip in. And you didn't get backups if your blade bent, broke, or fell down a well time. To improvise slate roof tile. Maybe rusty nail worth a shot shoe buckle with intent desperate times. You carried your tools hidden in hem's boots or inside hollowed out bread if needed. And you kept them close, not for safety, but because in this line of work your weapon was your best friend, your boss, and your only retirement plan. There were no upgrades, no tinkering with gear between missions. You didn't polish your kit. You prayed it didn't betray you mid-strike, because in the end, it wasn't the weapon that did the killing. It was you alone, poorly equipped and expected to perform miracles, with a spoon and a prayer. Assassins weren't hired to take out random drunks in back alleys. No one paid you to stab Jeff, the sleepy candlemaker. Your targets were important. Nobles, bishops, military officers, sometimes even royalty. And those people, they were very hard to kill. First there were the guards, not 1 or 2 dozens, armed, armored, and well-fed. Some guarded the front, some the back, some just stood there, looking intimidating, daring you to blink wrong. You'd spend days memorizing patrol patterns, door creaks, and exactly how many stairs it took before the knight with asthma needed a breather. Second, there were walls. Castles didn't have front porches. They had gaseous murder holes and mows full of things that bite. If you didn't fall into the water, you still had to worry about arrow slits and boiling oil. Yes, boiling oil. Your job description included may get flamed for peeking. Third, there were the servants and staff, the cooks, scribes, and stable boys. One wrong look from you, and they'd be whispering to the guard captain faster than you could say. I'm just the herbalist assassins weren't just fighting swords. They were fighting gossip, and medieval gossip travels at light speed if it means someone gets to keep their head, and finally, your actual target paranoid rightfully. So these people were surrounded by backstabbers, relatives with claims to their titles, and 3 dozen people pretending to like them. They didn't eat without a tester. They didn't sleep without 3 locks on the door. Some even slept in decoy beds or rotated rooms like a deadly version of musical chairs. And don't get excited if you hear they're attending a feast. Yes, they'll be drunk, but so will you, and you'll still have to get past the royal guards. 3 dogs, a very alert jester, and witnesses. Holding tankers, even getting close to your target, could take weeks posing as a servant, bribing a chambermaid hiding in barrels. And when the moment finally came, you had 1 shot. 1 precise, perfect, non-squeaky, non-bloody ghost vanish in the night moment, or you'd become the next public deterrent, swinging from the castle gate with a sign that read, "Nice try." Let's be honest, when you picture a medieval assassin, you probably imagine sleek black robes, leather braces, maybe a mysterious hood, billowing in the moonlight. Reality, you looked like a sick goat herder with something to hide. Disguises in the Middle Ages weren't exactly high fashion. You didn't have custom-tailored cloaks or retractable armor. You had whatever you could scavenge: peasant rags, a monk's robe 2 sizes too big, or the remains of a guard uniform that definitely still smelled like its previous owner. The goal was to blend in, but blending in meant looking like everyone else who hadn't bathed in weeks, limped from old injuries, and had a nervous twitch from malnutrition. You didn't look suspicious because of your cloak. You looked suspicious because you kept adjusting your belt to hide a dagger wrapped in cheesecloth, and forget masks, there were no Guy Fawkes options. Most face coverings just made you look like a leper, which was great for avoiding conversation, but terrible for entering parties. If anyone asked who you were, you had to think fast. I'm Brother Tobias. I take care of silent prayer and rooftop maintenance. Even assuming you made it past the guards, noble households weren't full of idiot servants. Noticed unfamiliar faces, especially ones that fumbled chamber pots and couldn't name the cook's cat. You were always one. I've never seen you before away from being clubbed with a candlestick. And if your disguise did work, congratulations. You now had to stay in character for hours while pretending not to notice all the very stab-worthy people wandering by, also wigs they didn't exist. If you needed to look older or younger, you were stuck smearing dirt on your face, squinting and hoping no one got close enough to notice that your beard was glued on with honey. The truth was, your disguise didn't protect you. It gave you maybe minutes of confusion. After that, you had to be gone invisible or very, very convincing. And if anyone saw through it well, let's just say no one wants to be the assassin caught in the bishop's laundry room, wearing a nun's habit and holding a sword, especially not on a feast day in medieval times. If you were an assassin, you didn't have a team. You didn't have a sidekick with a crossbow, a clever alchemist in a secret lair, or a handler who gave you coded scrolls and warm encouragement. You had a rusty dagger and crippling trust issues. There were no guilds, at least not ones you could actually count on. And if there were whispers of a brotherhood of assassins, it was mostly tavern talk, fueled by me and boredom. You were more likely to meet a ghost than another professional killer who wanted to network. Why the isolation? Because in your business, the fewer people who knew you existed, the longer you lived. Every contact was a risk. Every loose tongue, a potential noose. Even your client might not know your real name. And if they did, you were already planning your exit companionship. Laughable friends asked questions. Lovers noticed bruises, bloodstains, and why you always slept with a blade under the pillow. You couldn't settle down. You couldn't afford to one mistake, one person recognizing you in a market, and your whole life turned into a sprint for the nearest sewer grate. Even fellow criminals kept their distance. Thieves and smugglers were sociable. You were that guy who makes people disappear. They feared you, or worse, saw you as a walking liability. No one wanted to share stew with someone whose occupation could attract a mob with torches, and don't expect sympathy. You couldn't tell anyone how hard it was to sleep after silently strangling a corrupt bishop. If you talked about your job, people assumed you were either lying or dangerous, and they weren't wrong. So you kept your secrets, your scars, and your weapons to yourself and you sat in the darkest corner, back to the wall, eyes always scanning the door. You never drank too much. You never stayed more than a night. You didn't say your name unless someone paid you first, and even then, it probably wasn't your real one. Being a medieval assassin meant perfecting the art of vanishing, not just in a crowd, but from every life you never got to have. Let's say you took the job you planned. Your route, you bribed the right doorman. You disguised yourself as a very convincing chimney sweep, and then you froze. Maybe the target turned around unexpectedly. Maybe they were with their child. Maybe you got the shakes at the worst possible moment, and your knife hand trembled like a terrified squirrel. Guess what? You're now dead, Because failure for a medieval assassin wasn't a slap on the wrist or a bad performance review. It was a public, painful, and wildly theatrical death, often involving ropes fire wheels or sharp iron devices with names like the Bone Cracker's Delight. Missing the kill meant blowing the whole operation. Your target lived and immediately told everyone that someone tried to murder them. Suddenly you weren't a shadow, you were a wanted man with a detailed description and probably a crude sketch tacked to every tavern wall within. Man, those guards you once snuck past now. They're motivated. Sometimes it wasn't even your target you had to worry about. It was your client if you failed. You were no longer an asset, you were a liability. Someone who could be tortured, interrogated, or worse talk, the very people who paid you would be the first to put out a second contract on you. And there were no second chances. No, sorry. The blade slipped. I'll try again tomorrow. You had one shot, one moment in time, and if you blew it, the best you could hope for was to die quickly, before anyone found out who hired you. Failure also meant shame, the silent, humiliating kind. You didn't just fail to kill, you failed to be invisible, to be perfect. And for assassins, perfection was survival. Anything less might as well paint a target on your back and start practicing your final word speech. It didn't matter how many jobs you'd done before no one cared that you succeeded times, because in this profession, you're only as good as your last kill. And if your last kill didn't happen, you'd better start running, so you did it. The plan worked. The dagger struck true. No screams, no guards, just a clean drop to the floor. And a very important person who now wasn't congratulations. Now run for your life, because being a successful assassin in medieval times didn't mean sipping wine on a rooftop while the city burns behind you. It meant fleeing through back alleys with someone's blood on your boots and a dog already sniffing your trail. There was no victory lap, no post-job drink with colleagues, no casual debrief with your client. You didn't even get a moment to admire your work. The moment your blade struck your new job became escaping everyone who now wants to murder you in increasingly creative ways. Guards coming doors, locked horses tied up on the other side of town. You probably bleeding. You had to plan your exit before the kill routes, disguises, fallback safenesses, maybe a boatman who owed you a favor, or at least didn't ask questions, because the city would go on lockdown within minutes. No one wanted a scandal, and lockdown meant closed gates, armed checkpoints, and a dozen angry men with swords who all just received your rough sketch and the phrase, maybe armed and extremely stabby. And let's talk about the client, assuming they actually planned to pay you. They weren't going to meet you at a cozy tavern with a smile and a thank you card. They'd probably vanish too. Because an assassin who just completed a job is the most dangerous person alive. You knew too much. You'd proven you could get into places others couldn't. So even when you succeeded, you walked away with coin in one hand and a giant target on your back. And what did you win a week of sleeping in Hoffs, bribing ferry captains, shaving your beard in the dark, and pretending your name was Brother Lucian as you tried to blend in with monks heading east? Because success didn't mean survival. It meant starting the whole game over in a new city, under a new name, with even more people looking for you this time. So yes, you made the kill. Now run like hell if being a medieval assassin wasn't already miserable enough, poor hunted and sleeping in places that smelled like goat. You also had to deal with the wonderfully creative paranoia of the people around you, because in the Middle Ages, assassins weren't just feared, they were considered cursed to the average peasant. You weren't just a killer in a hood, you were some unholy creature who whispered to demons and smeared frog guts on your blade under a full moon. Why else would you be able to sneak past guards and vanish? In the dark, logic wasn't exactly popular back then. But superstition, oh, that was everywhere. Some believed assassins could shapeshift others, claimed you were invisible unless bathed in holy water. One popular tale suggested assassins made pacts with forest spirits and could breathe death through walls. Imagine walking through a village and hearing a woman mutter, "Don't make eye contact. He might hex the baby." Even your tools were suspect, carrying a dagger. Clearly it was forged in a cursed forge, using poison that wasn't chemistry, that was witchcraft. And you probably stirred it with a severed toe under a blood moon. You'd think this fear might help you. After all, people avoided you, right? But the reality was worse, superstitious. Mobs don't hesitate. They don't ask questions. They throw stones, set fires, and shout things like, "Burn him," before he calls lightning. Your reputation made people overreact the second someone died unexpectedly, illness, accident, choking on a chicken bone. Someone would whisper, maybe it was a shadow man, maybe it was him. You could be hunted just for existing in the same village as a suspicious death. That meant you had to keep moving, always stay too long. And suddenly a priest is ringing a bell, while 5 angry farmers hold pitchforks, like they've been waiting for this moment their entire lives, and heaven help you if you were caught with anything remotely weird. Dried herbs, strange coins, or even a foreign accent. That's all it took for someone to shout sorcerer and light a torch in a world that believed monsters wore human faces, being too quiet, too clever, or too fast-made. You a threat? And in medieval logic, threats had to die quickly and preferably on fire. Ah, poison, the assassin's weapon of elegance. A quiet kill, no mess, no screaming, no steel on bone, just a sip, a stagger, a sigh, and done. That's the theory and practice. Poisoning someone in the Middle Ages was like trying to win a bar fight with herbal tea. And a bad attitude. First off, poisons weren't reliable. You didn't have access to purified cyanide, or a neat little pill labeled fast-acting doom. You had plants, mushrooms, minerals, maybe the occasional toad. You had to gather, grind, and pray. And even then, it might just give the target a stomachache and a renewed commitment to his anti-acin guard team. There was no scientific measurement. You didn't dose precisely. You eyeballed it a pinch too little, and the noble just vomits and cancels. Dinner a pinch too much, and you die from exposure before the first course is served. Also, medieval kitchens were chaotic. You couldn't just waltz in and season the soup with nightshade. You had to bribe or impersonate a cook, sneak in while no one was watching, or worst of all, try to poison a meal that would go through 3 tasters and a dog. Yes, a dog, and if your victim was a noble, they didn't just eat food, they treated it like a military operation. Meals were tasted, blessed, and sniffed by everyone, from the steward to the jester. By the time the food hit their plate, it had passed through more security than a royal wedding, even assuming you did it. You slipped in the poison, it wasn't detected, and the target actually ate it. The next part was wildly unpredictable. Some poisons took hours. Some took days one minute. Your mark is laughing at a joke the next. He's clutching his stomach and demanding to see his astrologer. And if they survived, guess who they'd blame? Not the cook, not the taster. You, the quiet man with the herbal knowledge and twitchy eyes, so poisoning wasn't efficient. It was risky, slow, and full of variables. None of them in your favor. And if you were caught, you didn't get a quick death. You got interrogated with tools until you confess to poisoning everyone from the Duke to the dog. You'd think that if you successfully changed the course of history by removing a tyrant, sabotaging a royal bloodline, or silencing a political threat, someone would remember your name. Nope. You were an assassin that meant your name was never meant to be remembered, at best. You were a rumor, some hooded figure, a foreigner with cold eyes, or the quiet man who never finished his ale. You might have pulled off the most legendary hit of the century, and still ended up as a mysterious death in the official record. In fact, that was the point. Your client didn't want a story. They wanted plausible deniability. The fewer people who knew who did it, the safer they were, and the less likely they were to end up poisoned by their own assassin. So your name was buried. The moment the job was done, if you even used a real one, you didn't sign your work, you didn't brag, you didn't keep trophies, you didn't exist outside the moment of the kill. And if someone did know your name, that was a loose end, and in your profession, loose ends had a very short shelf life. And forget about honor, there were no medals for silence, no stone monuments for the man who stopped a war with one dagger in the night. If a noble wanted a statue, they commissioned one for themselves. You got a wooden box, an unmarked grave, or if things went really badly, a head on a spike labeled traitor. Sometimes your name was known only so it could be cursed. You'd become a whispered warning. Don't cross the king, remember what happened to Lord Ulrich, yes. And the man who did it gone like a ghost. That was your legacy. Not fame, not fear, just absence. You weren't supposed to leave a mark. You were supposed to vanish. And if you stuck around long enough to be known, that was a fatal mistake. Because in the medieval world, heroes got remembered, assassins got erased. So you survived. You got the job done. You even managed to get paid, a miracle in itself. Now all you have to do is lay low, keep your head down, and trust that your client will honor the deal and protect your identity. Right, wrong. Because in the world of medieval assassination, there was one rule even more sacred than don't get caught. Never trust anyone, especially the person paying you, your client, be they a noble, a merchant, or a bishop with ambition and very loose morals, didn't hire you out of respect. They hired you because they needed something awful done, and you were the sharpest tool in the shadows. Once the job was complete, you became a liability. You knew too much. You knew who wanted who dead when, why, and possibly how much they were willing to pay for it. That made you dangerous, not just to their enemies, but to them. So what did they do? They ghosted you. They denied they ever met you. Or worse, they sent someone else after you to clean up, to tie off the contract with something sharper than ink. There were even cases where clients double booked, hiring one assassin to do the job and another to kill the first one immediately after. No refunds, just reduced risk. And if you dared try to blackmail a client, threaten to expose them, that was bold. And also your final mistake. Because powerful people in the Middle Ages didn't negotiate with assassins. They crushed them. If your client had a shred of honor, a rare species, indeed, you might get paid and left alone. But even then, you'd still have to assume they were watching you from a distance, with someone already sharpening steel and memorizing your walk. You were the secret that couldn't talk, the shadow that couldn't stay. Even success wasn't enough to earn trust, because in their eyes, if you killed, once you could kill again. And no one, not even the person who hired you, wanted to be next. Let's say somehow you beat the odds, you survived. The kills, the lies, the poisonings, the betrayals you outlived. Your enemies, your employers, and probably your own sense of morality. Now, What you retire, absolutely not, because in medieval times, assassins didn't get retirement plans. There were no farewell banquets, no quiet cottages by the sea, no pensions paid in gold coins and grateful whispers. You didn't fade into a peaceful life. You vanished or you died often. Both. The problem was simple. You were never safe. Even if you walked away from the job, your past didn't. You had too many secrets in your head, too many names in your memory, and too much blood on your hands. People didn't want you retired. They wanted you forgotten, which usually meant buried. And even if no one came after you, and that's a big, if you had to live with a constant fear that someone might, that a new assassin, young and eager to prove himself, had just received a contract for a shadowy figure who used to be someone dangerous. So you changed your name again. You moved to a village where no one asked questions. You faked a limp sold herbs, pretended you once worked as a guard, but even then you didn't sleep well. You avoided crowds. You always sat facing the door. You kept your dagger under the floorboard next to the pouch of coins you never touched because it still smelled like the man you earned it from. And you couldn't trust yourself either. Years of silent killings and quick escapes did something to your brain. Every knock on the door made you flinch. Every stranger on the road might recognize you. You stopped dreaming because dreaming was dangerous. You couldn't love. You couldn't relax. You couldn't laugh too loud. You lived like a ghost pretending to be a man. The truth was, there was no end game for a medieval assassin. Just a slow, cold fade into obscurity, always moving, always watching, until one day you slipped into the dark and no one noticed. And maybe that was the best you could hope for. By now you've probably figured it out. Being a medieval assassin wasn't darkly romantic. It wasn't noble. It wasn't even all that profitable. It was a grim, thankless, short-lived career, wrapped in blood-stained linen and followed by a crowd of people who wanted you dead. You wouldn't last not a week, maybe not even a day, because you'd start with the wrong assumptions that you'd be sleek in control, a whisper in the dark, but what you'd really be is cold, hungry, and one bad guess away from the noose you'd slip into town. Cloak pulled tight, ready for action, only to discover that your target moved locations. The guards are drunk, but trigger happy, and the stable boy you paid for information just sold you out for a mug of ale and a piece of bread. You'd freeze at the wrong time, stab the wrong guy, get spotted by someone's maid who once saw your face near the chapel, and suddenly you're not a shadow. You're the problem then. What you run, but you're not used to medieval terrain. The mud, the uneven cobblestones, the absolutely insane number of loose chickens in the street. You slip fall, get tackled by a guard named Thomas, who just got dumped and is looking for an outlet. And let's say you survive that, then you deal with the aftermath. No allies, no honor, and no future, just whisper suspicion, and the growing realization that even if you succeed, the best you can hope for is to die old and alone, hiding behind a false name in a village that still believes in fairies. So no, you wouldn't last, and frankly you shouldn't try, because the assassin's life wasn't cool. It was a cruel machine that chewed people up and spat out nothing but shadows. It offered power without peace and purpose, without a place in the world. You didn't make history. You erased yourself from it. And the only thing waiting for you at the end was silence. A silence no one would question, because no one even remembered you were there in the first place. Before she was the feared queen of Macedonia, Olympus was known as Myrtale, a Maloyan princess from the rugged tribal lands of Epirus, Her people claimed descent from Achilles himself. And whether or not the blood of heroes truly ran in her veins, one thing was certain. This was not a woman born for the sidelines of history. From a young age, Myrtle was steeped in mystery and ritual. Her upbringing was shaped not just by politics, but by prophecy, ecstatic rites, and a reverence for the ancient gods. She wasn't the type of princess who smiled and embroidered tapestries. No, she was drawn to serpents, omens, and the frenzied ceremonies of the cult of Dionysus, where women danced barefoot in the moonlight and called upon the divine in states of trance. Her connection to the gods wasn't performative. It was personal. She didn't merely worship, she embodied, according to ancient sources likely written by men, both terrified and enthralled. She kept sacred snakes in her. He didn't just meet a beautiful princess. He met a mystery he couldn't resist. Their marriage wasn't just a political alliance. It was a collision of prophecy and power. And from the very beginning, it was full of omens. Some said lightning struck the sky on their wedding night. Others claimed Olympias dreamed of a thunderbolt entering her womb. All of it would become legend. But one thing is certain. The union of Olympias and Philip didn't just create a child. It created Alexander the Great, and she intended to shape his destiny. From the very first breath, Olympia's marriage to Philip II was not the fairy tale one might expect for a queen who would one day birth an empire from the beginning. It was a combustible mix of prophecy, pride, and paranoia. Philip, ruthless, charismatic, and already collecting wives like trophies. Married Olympias around BCE, she was likely just a teenager. But she wasn't naive. She saw in Philip a man whose ambition matched her own, and perhaps even a divine match for her spiritual destiny. Macedon wasn't exactly an easy kingdom to walk into. It was a land of iron and ambition, where kings were killed by cousins and brothers turned into rivals overnight. But Olympias, the priestess of Papyrus, walked in with her head held high and eyes already on the crown. Their marriage was rocky from the start. Philip, for all his political genius, was not built for monogamy. He would go on to marry multiple women, often for alliances, always for power. But Olympias wasn't one to sit quietly in the shadows. She held her own court, maintained her own alliances, and was known to turn to oracles and rites to divine her future. And perhaps Philip's fate. Then came the birth of Alexander. Even that was wrapped in celestial drama legends. Say Olympus dreamed that a thunderbolt struck her womb and that flames danced around her child without burning him. Philip reportedly had a vision of sealing his wife's womb with a lion, yes, a literal lion. Whether they believed these visions or invented them, they certainly acted as if Alexander was destined to rule not just a kingdom, but the world. But even as the child was celebrated, cracks in the royal marriage deepened. Olympus resented Philip's other wives, especially his Macedonian bride, Cleopatra Eurydice, whom he married later in life. This was more than a domestic issue. It was a threat. Cleopatra was Macedonian-born, and any son she bore would be purer in the eyes of the local nobility, a direct threat to Alexander's future. Olympia saw it clearly. The palace wasn't just a home, it was a battlefield, and she would use every snake dream ritual and whisper she had to make sure her son wasn't just remembered, but crowned. She was no longer Myrtle. She was Olympus now, and no one would take her son's throne without facing her wrath. By the time Alexander was a teenager, the Macedonian palace in Pella had become a war zone of veiled insults, political maneuvering, and bitter rivalries. Olympus wasn't just fighting for influence. She was fighting for survival. She knew that the court was filled with snakes, but she was the one who taught them how to bite. Philip II had begun to distance himself from her. He was campaigning more, drinking more, and perhaps worst of all, listening more to his Macedonian advisors. The final blow came when he married a young noble woman named Cleopatra Eurydice, not to be confused with the Cleopatra of Egypt. This Cleopatra was Macedonian born, and her uncle Attalus was one of Philip's top generals to Olympias. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a declaration of war. The marriage ceremony was a disaster at the feast. Attalus drunkenly mocked Olympus, and Alexander calling into question the legitimacy of Alexander's birth. Was he really Philip's son, or was he the child of a god? As Olympus liked to claim, it was meant as an insult, but Olympia seized the myth. Let them whisper, let them believe her son was touched by Zeus. It made him untouchable. Alexander stormed out of the feast. Olympia left Macedon entirely retreating to Apris. But her exile was not defeat. It was strategy in her homeland. She was still royalty. She could gather support, whisper in ears, and watch as Philip's palace began to rot from within. She didn't need to be physically present to be dangerous. Then came the shockwave. Philip was assassinated at his daughter's wedding, just as he was about to invade Persia, just as he was on the verge of crowning himself not just king of Macedon, but potential emperor of the known world. The question that echoed through every marble corridor and torchlit hall was the same: who did it? Was it Porsenius, the jilted bodyguard who carried out the act? Was it the result of court intrigue? Was it Alexander himself? Or whisper it softly, was it Olympus? No one could prove it. No one dared, but many believed it after all. Within days, Cleopatra Eurydice and her newborn child were dead, murdered, some say by Olympus herself. The serpent had returned to the palace, and now nothing stood between her son and the throne. With Philip dead and Macedon in mourning or confusion, Olympias made her move, while others scrambled to understand the chaos. She acted swiftly, brutally, decisively. First, Cleopatra Eurydice, the young Macedonian queen and rival wife, was eliminated according to chilling accounts. Olympus didn't just have her killed, she made her death symbolic, public, humiliating. Some say Cleopatra was forced to hang herself after watching her infant daughter be murdered. Others claim Olympus had the child thrown onto a funeral pyre. What's agreed upon is this: no mercy was shown. Olympia understood what many mothers in ancient courts refused to accept in a royal palace. Mercy is a liability, a rival child, no matter how small, is a future war. And Olympias was done playing defense with Cleopatra, and her bloodline erased. She could turn her attention to securing Alexander's throne. Her teenage son, bold, brilliant, already trained by Aristotle, was declared king, without serious opposition. But don't be fooled. It wasn't just his charisma or his father's legacy that made it possible. It was Olympus. She knew which generals to threaten, which nobles to flatter, and which enemies to quietly remove. She wasn't just protecting her son's rise, she was engineering it. Alexander himself didn't always approve. He reportedly disapproved of the violence against Cleopatra's family. But he also didn't stop it, because deep down he knew what Olympias had always known. Power demands blood, and in Macedon bloodlines were both a blessing and a curse with her son. Now King Olympias began to recede slightly from public life. But this was no retirement. She simply shifted from open strikes to whispered influence. As Alexander prepared to launch his conquest of Persia, she remained behind, not as a passive queen mother, But as the spiritual guardian of his destiny, she sent him sacred relics, consulted oracles, and performed rituals on his behalf. To Olympus, her son's mission wasn't just military. It was divine. Alexander wasn't going to war. He was fulfilling prophecy. And as long as she drew breath, no rival Macedonian Persian or otherwise would derail that divine plan. She had crowned her son. She had cleansed the palace. Now she would guard his empire from behind the curtain, with teeth bared, as Alexander marched east to conquer the known world. Olympus remained behind in Macedon, a queen without a throne, but not without power. Her official title was Queen Mother, but make no mistake, she ruled in all but name, though regency was technically handed to Antipater, one of Alexander's trusted generals. Olympus refused to be sidelined. She wrote letters to her son, constantly advising, warning, sometimes chastising him. These weren't the sweet letters of a doting mother. They were political briefings laced with oracles and venom, and Alexander, thousands of miles away, read every word. She reminded him who his true enemies were. She questioned the loyalty of his companions. She criticized his fascination with Persian customs, his choice of wives, and his flirtation with calling himself a god. No one else dared say these things to him, but Olympias was never afraid to speak as a mother or a priestess of divine will. Back in Macedon, Antipater grew increasingly resentful. Olympia undermined him at every turn. She used her status, her religious authority, and her family ties to stir opposition against him. She had influence in Epirus and Thessaly, and among the aristocracy, she could spread rumors like wildfire. And with Olympus, a whisper could be deadlier than a sword. Meanwhile, her letters to Alexander became more urgent. She warned him of Antipat's ambition, painting him as a second Philip, ready to betray and usurp, whether she truly believed it or simply feared losing her grip. She kept pressing her son to act. Alexander, however, hesitated. He needed Antipater to keep order in Greece while he fought in Asia, and so the rift between mother and general widened. Olympia watched. She waited, but beneath her religious robes and maternal concern, she was growing impatient. She hadn't endured years of palace warfare to be ruled over by an old soldier. As Alexander's empire stretched from the Ion to India, Olympia saw cracks forming. He was taking on too much, trusting too many foreign advisors, and drifting away from the mother and the gods that made him. She believed his victories came from divine favor and from her. And if he forgot that, well, Olympus knew how to remind kings who they really were, even